Welcome to the Love is Our Nature podcast, where we discuss all things ranging from love, relationships, authenticity, fulfillment, to lessons from plant medicine journeys, inner healing, and living your truth. I'm not your teacher. I'm only your fellow student. Occasionally, you also get to hear some of my own healing process and journey back to love. The point of the program? That you take away at least one actionable piece of knowledge that supports you in expanding whatever aspect of your life your heart most desires. My name is Cesar Rodriguez. I will be your host, and I am honored to have you here. Happy listening. All right, here we are. Welcome to the Love is Our Nature podcast. My name is Cesar Rodriguez. I am your host, and I am so delighted to have an amazing guest here today. Her name is Kaveesha. Is it Deva Kaveesha or Kaveesha Deva?
So my whole name is Deva Kaveesha, but that's quite a mouthful. So I go with Kaveesha.
All right, Kaveesha. So let me tell you a little bit about Kaveesha. Kaveesha is an online coach for breathwork and trauma release who is based in Stockholm, Sweden, in the northern part of Europe. Born in Vienna, she studied business administration at the university and worked for 10 years in the tech industry before finding her calling as a healer and training as a biodynamic breathwork and trauma release system practitioner in 2019. Got that right. Today, Kaveesha supports overachievers to break free from old patterns, allowing them to open their heart to love. With her support, you reconnect with your inner child, understand what childhood trauma is, receive knowledge on how trauma is stored in the body, and get help in releasing trauma from your body. Ultimately, Kaveesha guides people to a place where they feel safe, nourished, and truly loved. Kaveesha's own healing journey has led her to a fulfilling life full of love and being able to enjoy her favorite activities such as travel, kite surfing, dancing, and enjoying sunsets. So welcome, Kaveesha. Thank you for being here with us today. And just welcome to the Love is Our Nature podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me and for the lovely introduction. It's like,
Yes, definitely. I am so excited about this conversation. I happen to have just participated a couple of days ago in one of the breathwork group sessions that you had down in Nosara, Costa Rica, about a couple hours south of where I am. And we're going to be talking all about that. By the way, that drive from Potrero, Costa Rica down to Nosara is such a fun drive. Much different than what I'm used to in the city, right? If you're not careful, you drift off the hill. So you are currently in Nosara right now still, yes?
Yes, for now. I'm going to move soon inland, but for now I'm in Nosara. Exactly.
All right, great. Well, how are you doing? How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's another day in paradise in Costa Rica in the dry season, warm weather, palm trees, the sea in front of the doorstep. So yeah, I feel very open, very abundant.
Wonderful. Yeah, it is paradise down here in Costa Rica. This is the dry season, huh? So like it's in October, around those months that we would get a lot of rain here. Is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I've been feeling like I live in a postcard while I'm over here.
Yes, I can relate to that.
Yeah, and I totally share your hobby of watching the sunsets. It's become like one of my number one things. I don't miss a sunset these days. It's just so wonderful. And it's right out here, so it's perfect. All right, Kaveesha. Well, let's jump right in. I have quite a few questions I want to ask you. I'm excited for people to get to know you and your work and what breathwork is all about. I was not very familiar with breathwork at all. I had only done some pranayama breathing through my practice of Kriya Yoga. So you taught me quite a bit about breathwork, and I'd love for us to expand on that. So before that, why don't you share with us, how did you come across this line of work? How did you become a breathwork practitioner?
Yeah, it's quite a journey. Where to start? Yeah, you mentioned in your intro that I used to work in the tech industry. I spent a whole decade working for a multinational tech company, and build up an aspiring life. And I'm quoting that because right now it's not my aspiration, but definitely something society in the Western world is teaching us. I successfully graded in university. I had a stable romantic relationship. I had this thriving corporate career in the tech industry. So on paper, I ticked all the boxes, but there was a certain emptiness inside of me that followed me wherever I went.
Yep.
When I was at work, when I went on vacation, when I was out with friends. So it really felt like a missing piece in the puzzle that got lost somehow. And I didn't have a clue where to find it, because actually I didn't have any reason to feel that way, right? I ticked all the boxes. That's what people should do.
Yeah, that happens to some of us sometimes, right? Like we achieved what we had understood is what we're supposed to achieve, and there we are, and we're like, something's missing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there was this, I constantly felt stressed, and also twice I was really close to a burnout. And I'd been in talking therapy for like 20 years. I'd analyzed my problems from every possible angle, and telling my story, in particular what happened in my childhood, in my teenagehood, gave me a temporary peace. But eventually I found myself back in the same old pattern over and over again, recreating dysfunctional situations and relationships and so forth, right? So it kind of was like, I've been doing that for 20 years now. Like, the support that I'm receiving has its limitations. So I started to explore myself through somatic experiences, including the body. And that's when I could feel in my physical body, in my physicality, that I was numb. I had built this thick wall around my heart to protect me, and I could literally feel it in my body. I could feel brick by brick, in my chest. And from that moment onwards, the universe showed me more and more healing opportunities that took a more holistic approach, such as embodiment through dancing, for example, breathwork, plant medicine, tantra. And my longing to be of service really was triggered when for the first time I felt my essence. With every fiber and cell of my body, I could feel my true self.
What point was that at which because you mentioned a few different practices, and maybe it was like an accumulation of experience after experience, but I'd love to hear maybe if you could recall the point where there it was.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a moment I will never forget.
Yeah.
It was actually during a retreat called Path of Love.
Path of Love.
Exactly. It's a 7-day personal development retreat where you go on a journey with yourself, within yourself. And my experience there was that day by day, session by session, I peeled off different layers of programming, of conditioning, of expectations that were either put on me by my environment, or I put on myself in order to fit in order to, be safe in the environment I was. And so one of these days during that Path of Love retreat, I had this experience of physically, with every cell and every fiber of my body, I could feel my true self. I could feel my vastness, the different flavors and elements that create the unique flavor of Kaveesha. And, especially the gifts that I could feel were like, wow, this is what I can provide to the world. Like, that's fucking amazing. And that needs to be shared. So this really was the ignition.
Were you in an altered state of mind, like with psychoactives or psychedelics, or just no?
Path of Love works with purely holistic or somatic experiences. So it's really a lot of movement, a lot of dancing. They have a DJ there the whole week with an amazing sound system. So dancing, activating energies in the body through moving the body, and also entering the emotional and the energetic body through the physical body. By moving our physical body, there is obviously a connection in the emotional body, so we can touch and enter the emotional body through movement. So this is one of the core principles: movement and dancing and being seen.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for that. So then you were continuing to share how you wound up as a breathwork practitioner.
Yeah. So after that incident, I quit my corporate job. And I started, searching for healing modalities that resonated with me. I knew I want to support in the realm of trauma healing due to my own history and my own personal experience. I knew that I want to support in a virtual space. So that I can be a constant support system, no matter where my clients are, no matter where I am physically. And, just researching, going to workshops, trying out different modalities. And ultimately, I was drawn to biodynamic breathwork and trauma release because I just love the holistic approach of combining the breath. So consciously bring the body into a state of stress and alertness, triggering the fight and flight response, this instinctive response of I'm not safe and I either need to run away or I need to fight it. So we're using the breath in biodynamic breathwork to bring the body into this state and unravel memories or trauma that is stored in the body. So that they can float upwards to the surface, so we can look at that.
So that's actually what goes on. You get yourself to somebody who's participating gets themselves to a state of, you said, stress and alert. Interesting. Exactly. I didn't know that part. Okay. So that's how you wound up a breathwork practitioner. You wanted to say something else about that?
Well, the additional 5 elements in biodynamic breathwork are then, through movement, and so moving the body or creating sound, either humming, toning, sighing. These are all elements how the trauma, how the emotion and the energy can actually leave the body. Also, emotions that are coming up are energies in motion. And staying in that emotion, allowing it to be felt, challenging emotions. For some people, that's sadness. When we were younger, when we were children, our environment downplayed our right to feel sad or our right to feel happy. That was actually, happiness was for a very long time the challenging emotion for me. That, just giggling for the sake of giggling, without being goofy and doing it's just like shaking my body, like putting my tongue out, whatever, just for the sake of enjoying my body or enjoying the moment. That was actually, for me, a challenging emotion. So, And then at the end of each breathwork session, we move in meditation or into meditation, which is a place where we reprogram on a cellular level, systematic level, and create, fill that space that was created by letting go of the trauma, by letting go of energy blockages in the body. There's new space, and we're filling that with love and with light, and reprogram on a cellular level. And it's magical.
Yeah. that is just so intriguing because see, all that is like brand new to me. Like there's this whole world there, right, of the internal and all the intricacies of it. It's quite a complex world. The internal world is what I'm learning, and definitely not stuff that we learn conventionally, right, in gym class. So I have a few questions about that. So you talk about trauma. What qualifies as trauma? Does everybody have trauma? Like, does something have to be like really intense for it to be qualified as traumatic? What would you say?
So, yes, I believe that everybody carries trauma. And there are different types of trauma. For most people, the definition of trauma is something big and bad has happened. And that definitely is trauma when we experience violence, when we experience an unsafe situation. Maybe we were involved in a car accident, or that definitely is trauma. And that's shock trauma, to be precise. It's like one incident that has a very big impact. For most people, however, they experience or we experience developmental trauma. And developmental trauma is like small incidences that bit by bit over time add up. And depending on what we experience the first 6 to 8 years of our life, we create a certain behavior pattern, certain pattern of thinking, a certain pattern of beliefs, and that shapes our personality. Or some people call it the ego. And the personality ultimately is a safety-seeking mechanism in order to fit into the environment that we grew up in. And it's kind of like a trial and error approach on, okay, if I behave like this, how is my environment reacting? And it's always the aim is to feel safe, to seek safety, to belong, to be loved, to get attention. And if something works, we continue doing it. If something doesn't work, we stop doing it.
So it's totally like a survival mechanism, right? On how to get away with, or not even get away with, but like move through the world safely, right? And get away with the least danger coming our way as possible, right?
Yeah.
It seems like, okay.
And ultimately, just to sum that up, trauma doesn't actually lie in the event. It's not what happened to us, but it's what effect does this event leave within us.
Right.
So if you take the example, two people are involved in a car accident. They sit in the same car. Fortunately, they don't have any physical injuries. So they come out fine physically. And the next day, one person, hops in the car, goes to work, and, as nothing happened. Whereas the other person is absolutely terrified of simply the thought of getting back into the car.
Yes.
And that is trauma. So it's what effect stays with you after an experience. And usually it's that the nervous system, like our physical body, couldn't do something, be something, feel something as it needed to. And it's suppressed. And with that, it's getting stuck. So that's trauma. And that can happen through shock trauma. But for most people, it's developmental trauma.
Wow, I never heard about developmental trauma either. Very, very interesting. And there's a famous quote. I don't know who's it's by, but they say life is 10% what happens to you, 90% what you tell yourself about what happened to you, right? So, okay. My next question is about this inner child that you mentioned, right? Again, had you talked to me 5 years ago about this, I would have been like, what's this? What do you mean inner child? Like I'm a grown adult. Like I don't see a child anywhere. I don't think if you cut me open, you're going to find a little kid there anywhere. So what do you mean we have an inner child? Is that just like some concept? Like, what would you say about that?
I like the example that you bring up, like cutting yourself up. No, there won't be a physical child inside of you.
Right.
So the inner child is basically a summary of all the experiences that we had in our childhood, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's based on what we experienced in the first 6 to 8 years of our life with the environment that we grew up in.
By the way, I know you're in the wellness room out there, and we're just going to include whatever background noise comes our way.
Yes, I think there is some construction work going on around for both me.
Yeah.
So depending on what we experience the first 6 to 8 years of our life, we create a certain behavior pattern, a certain personality, right? And it's the values, the thought patterns, the beliefs that we have. For some people, it's like the belief, I'm not welcome. They experienced an environment which was not welcoming. For whatever reason, it could be that the parents were too young and not hadn't planned to be pregnant. It could be that we were born premature, so we had to stay in an incubator for like a month or two and were separated from the parents. For other people, they have the integrated belief that I'm not enough. I need just by being, that's not enough. So I need to prove myself in order to be worthy of love. So like this combination of the internalized beliefs and then the behavior that comes out of it, that's kind of like the inner child. And very often that's also connected with, emotional wounds that we still carry inside of us.
Okay. And so I understood everything you said. And why do we call that the inner child versus just our past?
So something I guide my clients into is also finding a little bit the separation from the adult self and the inner child. And because it's like different needs that these two parts of us have. Nourishing and creating and building up an adult self that has the capacity to kind of like take off the distorted view through a certain lens that the inner child has. Like, let's come back to the example, I'm not welcome. With that integrated belief, most likely we don't feel safe. So we carry a set of glasses that distorts our perception of reality and sees danger wherever we go. There is always a possible threat, there's always a danger. So this is the inner child part behaves based on that worldview. So when we, as an adult self, learn to take off these glasses and actually see the situation as it's like the here and now, then we we react in a different way. We have more capacity to also think about, okay, what is it that you need in a child? What is it that you need? And the adult self has then the capacity to give and fulfill this need to the inner child. Just as our caretakers were supposed to help us. They were supposed to help us build up these basic primary needs and learn us how to evaluate what are our needs and how can we fulfill these needs. And for many of us, that wasn't the case, for one reason or the other, now as an adult, it's our responsibility to take care of our needs through self-care, self-love, self-responsibility. So this is like this building up and nurturing an adult self and separating it from the inner child.
That's great. And it's just so perfect that we're talking about this, that we'll go into a bit of my journey in this whole healing process in a moment, but what kind of set me off into this journey of inner healing was this moment of discovery, that I had an aspect of myself, like a part of myself, that I wasn't taking care of. Right? I had done other types of personal development work, and that was right in line with what you had said, right? And it was extremely valuable personal development work, right? I recommend it to everybody through the course called the Landmark Forum. But what I saw is that, wow, yeah, there's an aspect of things that I haven't really addressed, because I understood the things that happened to me in my past. I saw the paradigm, like the false paradigm that I created for myself, like you were saying, like I'm not good enough or I'm not lovable, right? And I thought that with me seeing it, right, that was really the access to being able to leave it, right? I loved this analogy that said to see the cage is to leave it. And I think that holds true to a certain extent. But my discovery that you're kind of pointing to now yourself as well is, well, wait a second. You don't just walk away from the cage, like you leave the cage and like, that's it. You never, because you saw the inauthentic nature of it or the false paradigm nature of it, it doesn't lose its pull on you, or it's right. That, which is kind of what you're saying. You're saying, no, we have to take care of the needs of this inner child. So I'm just so intrigued by that, because that's what's brand new to me. Like, wow, we have an aspect of ourselves that it would really serve us to cater to, right? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And I love your analogy with the cage. That was actually my experience as well. You know, when I started working with somatic experiences, and it literally, like, that was the exact same sensation that I had. I could like sense I put myself in the cage by building up the personality patterns and the safety seeking mechanisms, you know, due to integrated beliefs, certain thought patterns, certain values, certain behavior was created in order to fit into the environment. So the personality was created. And for me, it was like the strong, independent woman that can do it all by herself. And, you know, I've done, you know, been in therapy for so many years. And, you know, I got my shit together. So I can actually be there for other people. And when I was still working corporate, even then I was, you know, the rock everybody could lean onto, the shoulder people could cry on and relax. But, you know, there was always this facade, keeping it together, not showing my vulnerability. So that was the cage that I built. And I knew and I could sense I was the person that built that cage. So it was my decision. And with that, I must be the person that can free me out of that. But I had lost the keys. You know, I could see all the other children and they're having fun on the playground, and I was sitting behind the bars, and you're just like watching life pass by, and I wouldn't participate because of that cage. And I knew, if I find this freaking key, then I can also be the person that can let me free. And
Right. There's another layer to it too, right? Because what I'm getting in this conversation, which is right in line with what I've been discovering lately, like since December of last year, 2020, is that, yeah, you don't just walk away from the cage and like you're free from all your past for forever. Like, no, it seems like there's this, what we're referring to as an inner child, right? That we get to take care of. So, could you say a couple words about that, like taking care of the inner child? Like what does that mean, and why is that? What does that provide?
Taking care of the inner child can look very, very differently depending on what personality pattern we have created in order to, seek safety. So coming back to the example with the integrated belief, I'm not welcome and therefore I'm not safe here, I want to leave, is not the reaction. Then taking care of the inner child is like asking, okay, what do you need in order to feel safe? What is it exactly that, in this moment, maybe it could be that you look into someone else's eyes, a pair of eyes that you trust, and just stay with that. Don't focus on anything else. It could be that you sense your physical body, you take your hands or like squeeze your arms and you're like, okay, I'm here, it's safe. For other personality patterns, like with the integrated belief, I'm not enough, I need to prove myself in order to be worthy of love, then taking care of the inner child looks differently in the terms of like learning how to fulfill the needs themselves. So with an integrated belief of like, I'm not good enough, I need to prove myself, there is this behavior reaction of like always seeking on the outside in terms of fulfillment. So this is my personality pattern, always seeking on the outside. Firstly, social connections, like am I connected with this person, making sure that I'm part of the group, but also when it comes to food, for example, that enjoyment of the food was a way of fulfilling me, overeating partly as well. What else is there?
Well, those are actually all really great examples, right? Like, because there's no like one template on like, hey, this is how you take care of the inner child. Everybody has their unique version of it, right?
Yeah.
And let's go back to breathwork for a second, right? This is my question. I'm pretty sure the answer is no, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So, you do trauma release through breathwork, right? So, like, does if one does enough sessions of breath work, does one get rid of it? So to the point where you don't have to take care of your inner child anymore because all that is gone.
So what we let go of in biodynamic breathwork and trauma release is the effect that the events that we experienced in the past has on us now. So this is coming back to the definition of trauma. It's not the event that is trauma. It is the effect that it is left with us. So we're letting go of that effect. And with that, we create space, which can be reprogrammed. And we're taking off the glasses of the distorted view of the world. And our inner child is still there. The difference is that we're not acting anymore out of the wounded child. We are nourishing the inner child as the adult self is taking care of the needs and fulfilling the needs. And I like to bring up the analogy of, instead of letting the 5-year-old sitting behind the drivers or on the driver's seat and the adult self sits on the back, you swap again. So the adult is back on the driver's seat and the inner child becomes the passenger and have a beautiful relationship and connection. And, there's
you still ensure that you still ensure that the inner child has a really nice drive along with you while you're driving.
Exactly.
That's great. That's awesome. All right. Well, let's talk about Wednesday, right? There I was with you, right, in this wonderful event. And yeah, it was a pretty intimate setting, right? We're actually upstairs from where you are right now.
Yes.
And I walked in and everything was perfectly set up. You had 5 mattresses laying there, right? One for each person. And so I'm just going to go through what I experienced, and I'd love to hear.
Yes, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I went in like with no expectations, which is kind of how I've been doing this whole thing, like my whole my whole spiritual journey has been like the best analogy I think of is Dora the Explorer. You know, I'm just out exploring, right? And it's led me to so many amazing places, and it's been the source of so much joy in my life. So here I was with the same explorer spirit to see, okay, let me see what breathwork makes available. And I got to tell you, I wasn't expecting much from it because it's breathing. At least I thought, right? Like, we're just going to breathe. Like, I guess I'm going to feel relaxed or something like that. Maybe some memories or something. But holy cow, was I in for a ride. And I do want to say, I think intentionality has something to do with it too, right? Because it's been my experience too with ayahuasca, seeing some of my own experiences and other people's experiences, and as I talk with other people, I think the intention with which you go in has a big influence into the experience you end up having. That's been the case for me in ayahuasca, and perhaps it was the case here because I did create the intention that has been the intention my whole time here, right? Which is to discover what aspect of myself I've been suppressing or denying and allow it to surface and give it love and healing, right? So from what I recall, you guided us into what you called circular breathing after going through the 6 different elements of, what would you call them? The 6 what?
Elements.
All right, elements. And yeah, that was touch, memories, emotions. Help me out here.
It's exactly. So firstly, we're using the breath.
Yeah.
Then we're also using movement. So with the breath, energy start moving through the body, and the natural state of energy is to flow. So the body wants to flow, the body wants to move.
Yeah.
Then also creating sound. Also, I provided sound through music.
Mm-hmm.
Then the 4th element is experiencing emotions, staying conscious emotional release. Yeah. Then I provided also a bit of touch throughout our session, and the last bit was meditation.
Exactly. So it's tough for me to relay exactly what happened, transpiring the entire hour sequentially. So I'm going to just recap it in the best way I can. And, there's that point when we breathe in and out quite a bit that we start to get like a little bit dizzy, right? And the good thing is if you're on a mattress or laying down, like it's okay. You can actually keep going. And at one point my body started getting a little bit stiff. Like I could feel like certain parts of my body like vibrating, right? And then in some places more than others. And you said to look out for your body sensations, right? So I started looking to see where I'd feel body sensations. And I had quite a few places. And my hands got pretty stiff. And at one point I was able to you called it the resource, right? There's an aspect of our body that becomes like the resource, like where we connect most to energy. So I put my hand where I felt that. At this point, my shirt is off, and what became present for me, it was, for a second I did experience like the 4-year-old version, right, of let's call it my inner child, right? Like this paradigm of I'm not lovable, right? And but then what started surfacing, well, before that, at one point with my right hand, I touched my forehead like very gently because my hand was I was still having a hard time moving. And with my thumb, I touched my forehead, and it felt like the most beautiful thing I ever touched. I didn't know what was going on, but I never felt my skin be such a beautiful texture. And then I slide back into my hair, and it was like softest, like if I had used the best hair product ever, which I'm barely even using any right now. um, but everything just felt so beautiful. And I was moved by the very next thing that was there for me was divinity. I was moved by the divinity of my body, right? Which is, it built a lot on what I had already discovered and started to experience with my body, which was the fact that my body is part of the all, right? My body is it's not only does it have its own consciousness, but it's connected to everything. It's made of matter, the same way that everything in this 3D world is made of matter. And we see separation with our eyes, right? Like, you're separate from me, I'm separate from this computer, right? But there's stuff in between me and the computer, and between you and I right now, right? But if we were to look with the right tool, we would see no separation, right? But anyway, before getting too metaphysical, like I just got present to like the divinity of my body. And what was right there for me is how I haven't been relating to my body that way, right? Like, I haven't been honoring my body as divine. And yeah, to me, right, to Caesar, the human, that even starts to sound a little bit like pompous, like a little bit arrogant, even like, oh, what do you mean divine? Like, who are you to be divine? But like, we're all divine, like this whole thing is divine, right? I mean, if you believe that God created Earth, or created the world, or created everything, then everything is God, right? Including our bodies. Many traditions say God is omnipresent, right? So it's everywhere. And this tool, this being here called our bodies, is something that we get to intimately connect with very much in our journey here as humans on the planet. So I'm just getting present to divinity. And I was like, wow. What came to mind next was for a moment was when I've been re-engaging my practice of Tai Chi and Qigong. That I studied it for a year in the past, and I've been retaking it, and now I do it with music, right? And it's nice. It becomes kind of like a dance, and it's so cool. I'm going to talk more about this in future episodes, and even write about it, because it becomes a dance with like the masculine energy and the feminine energy. And I used to think that I was dancing with spirit, and the divine feminine when I would do these fluid moves. But what I saw there in that moment is, wait, it's a three-way dance. It's not just me and this spirit, it's also with my body. My body's also participating, obviously. Right, so now it's three of us, and maybe there's a whole lot more of us dancing. But I was just so moved in a way that words don't do it justice to how incredibly beautiful my body is. And what was next there for me is, wow, I haven't honored it that way. And it took me back into some memories, right? And this is the part where it gets quite personal for me, and it's fine. No problem with sharing, right? I used to be abstinent till about 24, right? And it wasn't for a religious purpose. It was more like I might have started with a religious purpose, like at 15, right? But very quickly it just became more about me wanting to share something sacred with somebody else. And it's not something that anybody really instilled in me. It was just really something quite genuine for me. And I didn't have a problem with it, right? Like, sure, I got teased when I was like 17 in school, like in high school, but I didn't care at that point anymore. I was so used to it. And I remember in college, somebody told me when I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm still a virgin," and a guy was like, "Dude, it's okay. It doesn't matter." Like he was consoling me or something, and I'm like, "Dude, it's quite all right. Like, it's not because of lack of opportunity or anything. It definitely was by choice." So then I was in a relationship, and it wasn't until 2 years into that relationship that we finally connected that way, and we had sexual intercourse, and it was amazing. It was beautiful. This is what started to come up for me because I'm like, wow, at what point did I stop honoring my body that way? And and this was kind of a new conversation as I was laying in that mattress in that room with you, because um, at one point, well, let me keep the story a little bit linear. So what happened at the end of that relationship? Um, I definitely didn't handle that relationship well. You know, this was one of my very first relationships, and I caused her a lot of pain. Um, and so we were on and off quite a bit. And towards the end, I had like this righteous view or position, like she should still want to be with me when she was quite done with it at this point. And and when I learned that she slept with somebody else, that for me, well, she told me because I asked her. That for me, like that moment, I remember it so clearly. Like it was like one of the biggest shocks of my life, and and just in the beginning of this conversation, as you were describing like the nature of the inner child, I started to see how like the way I reacted when she told me that actually resembled what happened like when I was 4 years old, when I gave this girl that I liked in pre-K a paper heart, right? And she said, "Oh, thank you." And then she came back a moment later and she said, "You know what? This heart is garbage." And she threw it and she walked away, right? And I was there, like I don't even remember what happened after that point. I just remembered making that decision, like, okay, it's a bad idea to share my feelings because it's dangerous and it hurts. You know, when this ex-girlfriend of mine, she told me that, like, I took off my glasses and I threw them on the floor. We were in the street. I threw them in the pavement and I dropped on the grass. It was quite dramatic. uh, Looking back, right? Like it was quite dramatic. And I start crying like uncontrollably. This was like 2013. So this started surfacing for me as I was laying there. Um, and and I remember thinking like, wow, what was the point of me relating to sex like sacred with her? Like if it's all gonna like be thrown away, you know, like we had created something together, like this sacredness around what sex is, and then and like a container, right? And again, mind you, like there's this righteous aspect of it because I definitely wasn't taking care of her emotionally either. Um, so so then there I am, and I remember after the relationship, I was that's when things started changing for me. I was like, yeah, I guess like what's the point of waiting, right, for sex? What's the point of like abstaining? And little by little, that paradigm started losing value for me, like from a logical standpoint, to the point that my second partner was somebody I dated for like 3 weeks, and then she moved, and then there I was single, and I had conversations with a few people, an older guy as well that I admired, business owner, right? And he pretty much, well, after the conversation with him, I realized um, like, yeah, what's the point of waiting, you know? And I used all this logic to justify why it's totally okay. I thought, okay, well, if I really love a girl, right, and then I learned that she's had like 20 or 40 sexual partners, would that be a deal breaker for me? Would I walk away? Well, and my answer was no, I wouldn't. If she is who she is and I love her for who she is, then that's just part of what helped her be who she is. So then I guess I could also do the same, because I thought I was doing what I thought I was doing what my future partner would want me to do. Right? I thought I was like that it was something that was going to be appreciated by her and that she would want me to do that. But as I flipped the script, I was like, well, no, like that's not a requirement. And then boom, I was unleashed. Right? And yeah, I had quite a few partners between now and then. I'm happy to say that every single one is somebody I highly respected, and we had a connection, even if it was a short time, like we connected at an intellectual level, right? But then again, as time went on, it did become like more and more of a transactional thing, to the point where I remember recently talking to one of my female friends and telling her, like, you know what, it's so odd. For some reason, I experience like this part of my brain, like there's always like some thought when I'm hanging out with female friends of mine. There's a part of my brain that's plotting, how do I get this girl to go to bed with me? Like it's always just there, kind of like formulating, right? So all that was surfacing for me in this session, breathwork session, and then what surfaced was just like the pain from that instant of back in 2013, right, 8 years ago. And I found that interesting because I thought it was going to be like more like a younger memory, right? But sure enough, that was the changing course of action, right? Where I used to have like this sacred relationship with sex, to then eventually go into then using logic to justify, well, sex can be anything, sure, it can be sacred and it can also be for pleasure, right? As long as there's communication and respect, right? And we both mutually consent, then it's like going to a playground, right? We go to a playground, we enjoy, and then we leave the playground, and like life goes on. and I used logic to totally alter the way I was doing life, in the aspect of sex. But at some point, by the way, all this is still brand new for me, right? It was only a couple of days now since that session, so it's like I'm still unpacking some of it. But that is what I started to see, that I hadn't been honoring my body with that divinity for as long as I've been an adult, and I haven't been looking for having a partner with whom I share my body honor my body in that same way, right? It's more like, all right, sure, right? And sometimes transactional. And I could see in that moment, I could perceive like my body being a little bit sad about that, right? So funny enough, as I've started to try to tune in to guidance from the universe, I have seen a couple signs pointing towards abstinence and celibacy. And while I was laying there, I made that promise to my body again. And it wasn't easy, right? Because there's the ego, right? The ego wants pleasure, and it's such a wonderful thing to experience, and right. But then there's something that I remember from way back when, right at the beginning of my whole relationship with sex, that was way more enjoyable than any of that type of sex, inside of a context of sharing something sacred, right? and I never used this word before, but yeah, inside the context of divinity. And not only had I not been honoring my body as divine, you know, I thought I was doing the best. I thought I was honoring my female partners in the best way, but I see now that I also wasn't doing it justice to their bodies, like honoring their bodies as divine. So that's what surfaced for me, and it was quite interesting to, you know, we shared that space with three other people, and I think you were there when the lady next to me, after I shared at the end what I got from the ceremony, which is similar to what I just said now, and we were all done and we were ready to walk away, she turns to me, she's like, "Hey," and I'm like, "Hey," and she grabs my hand, and for a moment she didn't say anything, and I could see she was starting to get emotional. So I just gave her space, right? I just began holding space for whatever her process was in that moment. And after like close to a minute, she like looks at me and she says, "Thank you." Right? And I could tell she'd cried a little bit in that moment. And she said, I've never been intimate with anybody because I'm still waiting to be related to or have someone honor my divinity. And it's so refreshing and wonderful to hear another guy say what you said, because I was starting to give up, like, because everything is so casual out there these days. It seems like everything is so casual. And she's like, and I'm much older than 28. I'm sorry, than 24. She said, right. Obviously, for confidentiality, we're not going to say her name. And I was like, wow, what are the odds that, you know, 4 people and then the one next to me, this is what she says to me, you know? So for me, it's more of that listening to the universe and getting those reassurances. And I was like, yeah, this is the right way to go. Not like there is a right way or a wrong way, but this is what I'm choosing for me now. And this is what is in most alignment with me. So that was my experience. I'm excited about rediscovering divinity in every aspect of my life, including this one. So that's a little bit about my experience. And I know that was a mouthful. So
how long was the session again?
You would have thought I was there for 3 weeks.
90 minutes, I think, Rain, right?
You know what? I left out a part. Yeah, it was 90 minutes. I left out a part where you approached me when I was kind of like stuck, right? With the rigidness. And I was right in the middle of having this whole inner emotional journey, and you placed your hand on my shoulder so gently, right? Just small touch on the shoulder. But the way in which you did that, like what I experienced in that moment was like reverence. And that was one of the moments where I just started crying. Because I'm like, wow, reverence. Like that's been missing, you know? And in the moment, this whole moment, right? If I were to try to capture in a sense, would be something like what I was seeing is that, you know, my thirst for sex was a symptom of my resignation about love. So, yeah, that was my breathwork journey. So thank you for providing that space and being there as a healer, as a space holder. Thank you.
Thank you for showing up for yourself. So that's something that's really important for me to convey as a message to anybody that is open to come into my space, that it takes two people to tango. It's like, yes, I'm providing the space, I'm creating the space, I'm having the doors wide open and welcoming people that feel a yes to join. But for profound experiences to happen, like you just shared, there needs to be a willingness to, come in firstly, and then also to be curious and see like, what is it there, So this exploration spirit that you mentioned. So just like, if you have one person that wants to lead the other and the other one doesn't follow, then it's going to be a shitty dance.
Right. Yep. We've all had those.
Yeah, exactly. So it takes two people to tango.
Yeah, definitely. And I didn't mention how you and I connected, which is again very serendipitous, right? Kind of like that young lady next to me at the session, right? The way I connected with you was at the cacao ceremony last weekend on Sunday. Like it must have been, I don't know, 20, 24 people sitting around a fire on the mountains on the north part of Nosara, and like, and there you were, just sitting next to me, right? And I said hello, and I'm like, and what do you do? And you're like, oh, I'm a breathwork, biodynamic breathwork practitioner, specializing in trauma release, childhood and inner child healing and trauma release. And I'm like, wow, what a coincidence that this is what you do. And there you are sitting next to me. And it's just so amazing to me, like how, I posted about this on social media the other day, like how when you surrender, it's like the universe supports you, right? And your guides, perhaps. That whole concept is also new to me. I'm learning to see what it is to connect to our guides, who are our guides, and how do we communicate with them, right? And so yeah. Thank you for being here. Thank you for this conversation. We could take a couple more minutes for you to share whatever you could share about your perspective from your experience of the ceremony, of the session that we shared together. And lastly, for sure, if you'd like to invite people to be in touch with you, I'd love to provide a way that they can do that as well.
Absolutely. Firstly, also, again, thank you for being so open and to share, what came up for you, what surfaced for you, and speaking from the heart, very vulnerably. That definitely was also something that touched me in our breathwork session when we opened the circle of sharing, and you really went into that, and I was like, wow, it's so beautiful, it's magical, and unfortunately also rare. Yeah, we're not taught to speak from the heart. We are not taught that vulnerability is actually our biggest strength. And so thank you.
My pleasure.
And I loved what you shared about, you haven't honored your body. And that's really, what I was my intention for the breathwork session, as I elaborated at the beginning of the session, learning you a new language, the language of sensations, and which is the language our body uses in order to communicate with us. Our bodies are constantly 24/7, sending us signals and showing us which part of our body needs awareness and, what's underneath this physical sensation, either on an emotional level or on an energetic level. So it was beautiful to see how you as participant, but the whole group really were open to start learning vocabulary of that language, and then also experience it at the same time. Right? Yeah. Going through the different parts of the body and just listening in, not trying to come with an attitude of let's change it, let's fix it, but coming with, again, this curiosity of an explorer, and having a look. Our body keeps score of everything that it experiences, everything. Mm-hmm. And especially the situations where the body could not act as it wanted to. It could not do what it wanted to. It could not speak. It could not feel what it needed to feel. So that's stuck in us. Mm-hmm. And it takes so little, actually. So little space, then the body instantly says, like, okay, I'm going to show you more. And it's the breadcrumbs that you start following, and it's leading you to magic places. And it's just what I see in my clients that, commit to themselves for a period of 10 weeks is really that this armor is let go of. This cage, as I shared from my story earlier, that I had built. If you put it on a physical plane, it's energetic blockages and armor that can show itself into intention. So that's for most people, they experience like something is constricted, blocked or locked. And over a period of 10 weeks, we really let go of that step by step. Also, we are looking into specific regions of the body. There are 7 belts of tension that our body holds. So over a period of 10 weeks, we look in different regions and have different practices and let the body lead the way. So often we push through life. Mm-hmm. We go, do, and the body has to follow.
That's one thing that you said at the beginning of the ceremony that so stuck with me. You were like, you said, welcome, right? I invite you to have this time be a time where, you get off the driver's seat, right? And you let your body have the driver's seat, exactly. Right? Let your body do whatever it wants to do, because we're always making demands on our bodies and making our bodies do whatever we want them to do. So allow this time to have your body be the one in command here and allow whatever it wants to allow. So that's just so beautiful. All right.
So for anybody that is interested to go on the journey and let the body be in the driver's seat, let go of the armor, I invite you to join my free Facebook group. We're going to put the link in the description.
Very good.
And there you firstly get to know me, the support that I offer. There are also tons of free resources available for self-exploration. And there you also can book a free heart-to-heart, and we look at where you now, where do you want to go, what's holding you back, and create clarity so that you really can feel into, like, is this support a fit?
Perfect. Yes, thank you for making that invitation, right? So I told Kaveesha at the beginning to definitely tell me what's the best way for people to get in touch with her. So that is the Facebook group. So it's facebook.com/groups/heal your inner child and feel truly loved, with a period between every single word. And for your convenience, we're going to link that at the bottom for sure. So thank you so much, Kaveesha, for being my guest in the podcast today. Such a pleasure having you. This was such an amazing conversation. I know it won't be our last conversation. We'll be in touch, and definitely. Perhaps we'll see you again in the Love is Our Nature podcast. So
thank you for having me. Thank you for listening.
Yes, my pleasure. All right. So in closing, go to loveisournature.com and subscribe to the blog. We will be sending notifications of new episodes there, and you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, as it's called now, or Spotify or iHeartRadio, whatever your favorite platform is. And all the episodes are right there in loveisournature.com. Click podcasts. So, Kaveesha, thank you, and we will see you again soon. And goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
That is all, folks. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for being a valued listener. If you haven't already, remember to subscribe to the podcast in whatever your favorite platform is. You can also watch the video version of the episode on the Love is Our Nature YouTube channel. Check out loveisOurNature.com as well. That's where you can see our latest news and most recent content. If you enjoyed the episode, leave a review, share it with your friends, or email me. I love hearing what you took away for yourself out of listening. My email is caesar@loveIsOurNature.com. That's CESAR, or Cesar, like my mother says it, at loveIsOurNature.com altogether. Till next time, I'll be here rooting for you. And remember, whatever the question, love is the answer.